There's a large portion of people who try to undermine and diminish the ability of Pep Guardiola as a manager simply because he manages top clubs. In my opinion, top clubs demand top managers. Many managers fail at these top clubs. Even guys like Mourinho, one of the greatest and most successful managers in the history of football, are not immune to the sack. But through all of his years at the top, Guardiola has never suffered that fate. Even though the lifespan of a coach at a top club is on average 2, maximum 3 years, Guardiola goes beyond that, winning all along and being called a checkbook manager along the way, ignoring the man management at play here. So let's try something. Let's try to speak about the accomplishment of winning a treble and the difficulty of doing so. Let's try to speak about money in football and how it isn't a guarantee of success. But for every person laughing at a failed financial project from PSG or Chelsea or Man United, saying how there's more to football than just cash, well, a lot of them are the same ones that call Pep Guardiola a checkbook manager, that anyone in his position could achieve what he has with the clubs he has managed. You can't have it both ways. Even with the investments made, what Guardiola has managed to do is something that quite literally only a select few managers have managed to pull off in the entire history of football. And Guardiola has done it not once but twice, with 2 separate clubs in 2 separate countries. That's unprecedented. He's alone in that class. And he's done so while playing attractive football and innovating tactics that would be copied by many along the way. Guardiola has been taken for granted by some, and it's gotta stop. Hey there, I'm Adrian and this is Rabona TV. If you're new to the channel, then welcome. If you find yourself enjoying the video, just quickly press subscribe to stick around for more videos weekly. Other than that, welcome back to those who have subscribed already. Great to see you, and let's get into this. And it's not a claim of innocence because it's not for me to say whether they are innocent or not. Unless you are a judge presiding over the case and you have access to every document, every email, every text message, the record of every account, all of it. Unless you have access to all of that and have been selected to oversee this case, then it's not for you to decide either. I don't know if they are innocent. The people involved in all of this don't even know themselves yet. We gotta wait and see here. But something I touched upon in the intro is that it's annoying that every time I want to purely talk about the achievement or the football for Manchester City, you have to qualify every statement by saying, this is not an endorsement. They might be found guilty. If they are, blah, blah, blah. Basically what I just did. I'm not here to talk about their ongoing investigations. It's unfortunate, but in praising the actual football from City, you have to constantly qualify things and state how you don't support their practices should they be found guilty, etc., etc. When sometimes you just want to talk about the football, but you can't because the conversation gets derailed by talk of financial doping and buying trophies from rival fans who have no interest in acknowledging anything but that. Which is fine, that's rivalries, right? Sometimes you want to just talk about the achievements and this habit of winning that's been created, but taken for granted and diminished by so many. And look, I get it. When you consider the teams he has managed and the incredible assets he's had available to him, it's easy to fall into cynicism. We all get like that. It's part of being critical and scrutinizing, but let's separate the two ideas for a second. I'm here to talk about managing a squad, not just any squad, but one filled with massive talents, massive egos, players who would all be starters at most clubs across Europe who have to then sit on the bench. Even those who are playing, you have to manage them to the point where they may be played out of position, something they won't take too kindly. You have to get them on board to the point where they aren't just accepting of this, but enthusiastic about it, so they can see the big picture of what they could achieve. No easy task. Just ask Tuchel while he was at PSG. And finally, I'm here to talk about consistency, one of the most difficult things to maintain in football. Forget about over a single season. We're talking about over multiple seasons, a harder job still. Consistency is the thing that separates the flash in the pan success stories from the true giants of the game, the surprises from the expected, the one-off title from the dynasties. And when it comes to football dynasties, there are few who can guarantee that, as Pep Guardiola has in his career. If there's one thing that can be attributed to a mark of greatness in the sport, is that you can make the difficult, uncertain, and insecure a guarantee. In other words, you can make something difficult seem easy. It's one thing to win the league once, but another thing entirely to defend your title and to ensure that complacency doesn't wreak havoc upon your squad, which is always the death of any title challenge. If there's one thing that you could attribute to Guardiola beyond his style of football and how he has innovated, it would be his consistency. Throughout his entire career managing at the top level in football, he has failed to win the league title on just 3 occasions, twice with Manchester City, one of which was his first season in England, and once with Barcelona. And the man to stop him? Mourinho. Other than that, he's won 11 out of 14 seasons while managing in Spain, Germany, and England. His league title success rate is at 78%, which would be hard to find anyone who can beat that, who has managed, I don't know, I'll be generous here, over 4 seasons in Europe's top 5 leagues. There are managers in the past who have had the moniker of guaranteeing success. We commonly hear it attached to Antonio Conte. Spurs ruined that though. We also hear it attached to Mourinho. Well, Spurs ruined that as well. In short, if you're a manager who builds a reputation of guaranteeing success, don't go to Spurs. Maybe Ange can change that. But beyond the league, recently with Man City, he has had them there or thereabouts in the Champions League as well. And this talk of consistency and Tottenham actually kind of go hand in hand here in a way. A few years ago, Guardiola's side perhaps could have made a run to the Champions League final if not for that crazy run that Tottenham went on before not putting up a fight in the final against Liverpool. Since that run, we haven't seen them remotely close to a final, whereas Guardiola's side has always been close. Losing out to Lyon was weird after some ridiculous sitters missed by the likes of Sterling, then losing the final itself to Chelsea, then losing in the final seconds against Real Madrid at the Bernabeu last season in the semifinals, and finally this season, they've won it. It took a few years of being in the running before they took it for themselves, but they were consistently in positions where they could have won the tournament, but they didn't. As Guardiola has said, the Champions League is a bit of a coin flip, whereas the league, you have more chances. There are so many factors in two-legged ties: the officiating, catching a team in form on the right night or wrong night for you, falling out of form on the wrong day for you. These things even out over the course of 38 matches. Consistency is at play here, but in a tournament setting, and what's interesting here is that Guardiola has been consistent in all competitions no matter where he went. With Bayern, he changed their football, won 3 league titles from 3, 2 out of 3 Pokal titles, and made the semi-finals of the Champions League in every single season. At Barca before that, he won the league in 3 out of 4 seasons, won the Champions League in 2 out of 4 seasons. He was denied of a potential three-peat by Mourinho's Inter in 2010, not Mourinho. He won the Copa del Rey in 2 out of 4 attempts. I mean, this doesn't just happen. As you roll through a video game, let's say you're going through Hyrule. At the start, you can get by with a stick and a rock, but you'll need better equipment the further you progress. If you're training at the gym, you can do a lot on your own, but you may need the expertise of a professional at some point to continue to grow. In training for football, you improve more when you train with better players and coaches. Basically, with most things in life. Sound off with the exceptions below, but you need better tools or trainers in order to continue to improve, in order to level up. The global football hierarchy is the same. How do you raise the levels of your team? You can sign better players, and if you can't afford too many of those, hopefully you can afford a better manager to lift everyone. Players fall into this category, as does Pep Guardiola as a manager, but people use his status as a stick to beat him with, to dismiss his accomplishments because he has only ever managed the elite clubs of the world. As if that's easy to do as well, right? People look at Guardiola's success as if he is a Nepo baby, as if he has no redeeming qualities as a manager, and that all of his success came down to having the best player on the planet, Lionel Messi, to springboard his career. Look, the springboard part is probably right, but once you've sprung, you gotta show that you are capable of winning without your main guy, Messi. And Pep absolutely did that. However, he hasn't had a Ballon d'Or winner in one of his teams since he left Barcelona. He may once again in Haaland, but the he can only do it with Messi claims are gone now. Just as you need to level up your gear in a video game, seek a better trainer at the gym, get a better swing coach for golf, what have you. The top clubs require the top managers because they often have the biggest and best players. Just because Guardiola took Barcelona to the top of the world doesn't mean it was easy. He inherited a team filled with talent and massive egos that had finished 18 points behind Real Madrid in La Liga. In his first season, he won the Champions League, La Liga, and Copa del Rey. This after selling Deco, Ronaldinho, Zambrotta, Thuram retiring, etc. A net spend of 39 million, and he took them from trophy-less to treble winners. It's a privilege in some ways that Pep Guardiola gets to work with the teams that he has, but it's a privilege that was earned due to his success that started at Barcelona and carried on at Bayern and into Man City everywhere he's gone. It's a privilege to get the opportunity, but whether that leads to longevity with the club or another chance at another big club is based on your performance. And for Guardiola, just once in his career, his first season with Man City, did he finish a season without a trophy. So better players give you a better chance at success, but not a guarantee of success. To say that Guardiola's success, his consistent, continued, almost guaranteed success, is entirely down to the financial muscle he can wield isn't a great take. And like I said in the intro, those same people who are saying his success is entirely down to his spending are some of the same people who are saying that spending doesn't guarantee success when laughing at Chelsea or PSG's failures of late. Failure in PSG's case to reach the Champions League final, to reach and win the Champions League final, the last cup they need. Well, they made the final once, but fell to Bayern. The spending gives him the best chance at success, but is nothing close to a guarantee of it. And we have proof of such at various levels of the game, and with more and more money coming into the game in England, we'll have further proof of such, and that's a guarantee from me. So many have tried to invest their way to success, and so many have failed. Hell, you could even look at the Galacticos era at Real Madrid. For all of that spending, they still had moments where they struggled. They didn't have the kind of dominance that we've seen from a side like Manchester City, for example. In that era, from 2000 to 2006, they won the Champions League and 2 La Liga titles. Barcelona won the same amount, spending far less. In fact, they spent almost 200 million less from 2000 to 2006. PSG is the example that comes to mind immediately. It's freshest in our minds. We are seeing it happen live before our eyes, where no matter how much PSG has spent, no matter how many generational talents they have in their side at one time, they continuously come up short when it comes to the Champions League. For years, they would fall out the quarterfinals. Then they had a hat trick of round of 16 exits before making the final, the semifinals in 2001, and 2 more round of 16 exits in 22 and 23. The first step out of the group stage was the end for them, to the point where they have lost a lot of people's trust, where a lot of people don't believe in them as Champions League contenders anymore. Chelsea comes to mind because of their recent expenditure, of which they spent $500 million in a single season, a club who in 2 of 3 seasons prior actually ended with a positive net spend, i.e. they made more than they spent, thanks to player sales. Where has that gotten them recently? After a ton of spending, they began sinking like a stone. Potter couldn't pull it off, nor could Lampard, despite spending in one January window what many clubs around the world can only dream of spending in their history. I'm speaking of clubs outside of the elite, of course, and definitely outside of the Premier League. But I ask you this, how do you think Pep Guardiola would have done with that Chelsea side? Or going further, how do you think he would have done with this Manchester United side? Better or worse than Ten Hag? Manchester United have a net spend of over €1 billion in the last decade. Over 1 billion euros. Man City aren't that far behind when you look at the previous decade. But they're still a full 200 million behind the red side of Manchester. City have spent a lot. United have spent even more. So I'm going to talk numbers here, and again, I'm going to qualify or put an asterisk next to this, but keep in mind that I know there's an ongoing investigation. If they are found guilty, then they deserve punishment. But my point isn't that City haven't spent less than people think, or that their net spend is better than others. More so that Guardiola could have failed, like all these other teams and managers that have spent big. With big investment comes big expectations, and he's one of the few managers that always will deliver. Just look at his record. Perhaps given his record and the fact that he's never been sacked, he could be considered one of the only ones that will deliver guaranteed. Anyways, back to Adrian. And again, that's if you look at the last decade. If you look in the past 5 years, so from the 2018-19 season to the recently concluded 22-23, City isn't in first or second when it comes to net spend in the Premier League. They're not even third. In fact, their net spend is lower than the likes of Newcastle United, West Ham, Tottenham, take your pick. With a net spend of 259.64 million euros in the past 5 seasons, when compared to the other Premier League sides, Manchester City isn't even in a European place in the standings. They're in 10th when it comes to net spend. just behind Liverpool, just ahead of Fulham. Now again, net spend takes into account your sales. And Manchester City have done well with the sales of Sterling, Zinchenko, and Gabriel Jesus recently, to the point where this past season, they actually finished with a transfer profit of 11 million euros, despite signing Haaland. Part of that is because City was the club that had something to prove when it came to pedigree prior. Guardiola legitimized them a lot in that regard when he signed on. Look at players like Julian Alvarez and Haaland or Akanji and the roles that they played for them. Relatively shrewd signings when you compare them to other squads, because Guardiola is a manager that they want to work with, because he's the closest guarantee to trophies in modern football that they can get. Because Guardiola is the embodiment of a force that bridges the gap from a chance at success to a guarantee of it. And that's what makes him great. And in that sense, what puts him in a class of manager that very, very few ever make it into. Thanks for watching, guys. If you enjoyed this video, then be sure to take in one of our others. But beyond that, we'll see you in the next one. Ciao.